Sally asked me to introduce our speakers, and I'm just so honored to do so. Jules is the co-founder and executive director of Foundation Rwanda. She worked as the creative director at the Andrea and Charles Braun Philanthropies and Reboot, a nonprofit looking at generational shifts in identity and community before leaving to start Foundation Rwanda in 2007. Jules shot the video for Foundation Rwanda's short Emmy-nominated Intended Consequences film.
And I wanted to tell you, it's a longer film, and there's one mother in there who I first met in 2007 on the border of Congo. She lives in a place called Kibuye in the western region on Lake Kivu. And it takes around 4.5 hours on a very dusty, muddy, pothole-ridden road to get to her home. And when I first met her, her name's Silvina. When I first met her, I went to her home and said, I asked her her story. I wanted to hear her story, and I asked her her testimony, and she told me the horrific story of watching her family killed in front of her, of being raped multiple times. And if that was not enough, a man threw a machete at her face and knocked out her teeth. And so when I asked her, what's your dream in life? She looked at me and said, I don't even know what tomorrow's gonna bring. How can I even answer that? And I said, but if you had the means, what would your dream in life be? And she said, education for my daughter, Elizabeth, who is her child born from rape, who happens to be one of her best friends. And she said to get my smile back. Oh. So I said, wow, how do we do that? So I said, education we can definitely do. The smile I'm gonna work on. And so I called a friend of mine who happens to be a dentist in New York, and I told him the story. And I said, is there any way we can help? And we had photographed her mouth, and I noticed that she covers her mouth when she smiles, and she told me she doesn't like to leave the house because the man who raped her family is her neighbor. So she lives, which happens in Rwanda many, many times. So she lives in the same community and sees that family all the time. So she doesn't like to leave the house, and when I took her photos of her mouth to the dentist, he said, no problem, Jules, we can do this. X-ray her mouth, DHL her x-rays to me in New York City, and I promise you we'll do this. So he's a very busy dentist. He happens to be a dentist to the stars. He does Sarah Jessica Parker's teeth, and 2 years go by, and I'm asking him every 3 months, can we do it, can we do it? I gave you the x-ray. And he says, okay, I'm ready. This summer I'm ready. And it was 2010, and he made a set of teeth for her, and we hand carried them to Kigali. President Kagame's dentist opened his office for us, specially. We didn't tell her we were doing this, and we brought her to the dental office. 10 of us piled in the small dental office, and we gave her her smile back. Aww. And I cannot tell you what it means to watch a human being literally get her smile back. Aww. It was the most beautiful moment I've ever seen in my life, and she spoke Kinyarwanda and we spoke English, but we knew each other very well, and she looked at me and she started to sing. And Marie, who's Rwandan, I think will know that in Rwandan culture, that is a very expressive way to share your happiness or your joy or your courage. And so what I'm here to tell you tonight is the number one question I get from the mothers that we support is, how in the world do people care about me? How does someone across the world care? And it is absolutely fantastic that you are all here, part of Dining for Women and supporting other women in need. The women of Foundation Rwanda, there are many of them. There's an estimated 20,000 children that were born of rape during the genocide in Rwanda. It's impossible to get figures because of the stigma of having a child from rape and because of the stigma of HIV. Nobody wants to come forward and share their stories. When we first figured out this story, we began to ask local NGOs, why isn't anyone doing anything about this? And they looked back and said, we can't touch this issue, there's too much stigma, but you can do it. And so that is why I, as an American, a white American, decided to do that. But I want you to know I did it with a Newsweek photojournalist, and the way we wanted to start Foundation Rwanda was to really do it in a local Rwandan way and very, very sensitive to the issue. So we were only going to work with the Rwandan team, local Rwandan partners, and we knew the value of what we could bring abroad, like you, and how we could help. And so Foundation Rwanda is a very small grassroots organization. I'm the only full-time employee in the US. We have a program manager in Rwanda, we have a full-time social worker, and we have a local support network of local NGOs, 5 local NGOs that we work with. And that is how we deliver education to the Foundation Rwanda students, as well as counseling and holistic support to their families. Education is our main mission, and for many, many years the women were asking, what about trauma counseling? How can we provide trauma counseling? And so that was a very interesting question for us, because Western notion of counseling is to go to a psychologist and to go for counseling therapy. There are different methods of that. What we found in Rwanda, when we spoke to the women and the mothers that we support, there were a few issues. Number one, since many had been through horrific stories and experiences in the genocide, nobody wanted to go share their story. If they wanted to share their story, they would have trusted family members, and many don't have any surviving family members whom they can tell. If they were the next person that they would go to is a spiritual or a religious person in their community. Many have lost religion because of what happened to them and aren't able to do that. And then the other issue was that there are only 2 psychologists in a post-conflict country in all of Rwanda. So the need for mental health is so great. So for 5 years we've been thinking about how do we do a trauma counseling initiative for women with children born of rape. I had no idea how to do it, and so we enlisted local partners. We did focus groups with the mothers, with the children, to really understand what their needs are. And the major issue for many of them was, if we want to tell our children how they came into the world, how do we go about doing that? We don't even know how to do that. But we don't have the tools to do that. So I want to make it very clear that Foundation Rwanda does not advocate that they should tell their children or they should not. What we wanted to advocate for was programs that directly come from them. They wanted trauma counseling and they wanted disclosure techniques, many of them, who, if they decided to tell their children, would then use. And so we wanted to create a really safe environment where they could come together and not be isolated and join other women like you. I mean, when they're together, they share their problems, they're not alone in the world, and they're beginning to really form a support network. And so we started the trauma counseling. We piloted a program for 40 mothers in rural areas who were not getting aid, and it was such a successful program that we applied to Dining for Women to see if we can bring it to 200 mothers in Rwanda in 2014. So that
support groups.
So yes. So the way it works is it's 10 women meet with a Rwandan social counselor, and then they have a community counselor that they've nominated in their community, who then becomes kind of their leader of the group. Yes. And if somebody has problems, then they know to go to that woman, and then she can report back to them.
They meet like once a week?
They meet, no, I think they meet once a month. They meet once a month, and then I think it's either 10 or 12 sessions, sorry. I can't remember exactly how many. And then there's evaluation before, in the middle, and after. And Dining for Women will also be supporting groups for their children, their daughters. So we're gonna do counseling when the girls are out of school for their daughters, those who have been disclosed to and who might be doing poorly in school and who need extra support from counseling.
Because there's sort of a genetic trauma that gets passed on through the DNA. So they might not know why they have issues, but it's from the trauma.
And that I don't know much about, but I can tell you what I do know about, which is hearsay. And many students were asking, who their father was, and the mother would create stories to tell them, your father died in the war, and your father died in the genocide, your father moved to Congo and doesn't live here. And then people in the neighborhood would begin to tell kids the real story, or tease them, you're the son or the daughter of a militiaman. And so, these kids are all turning 19 years old. The 20th anniversary of the Rwandan genocide is next year, next April. And this is a very pivotal moment for mental health in Rwanda, because it's 20 years after the genocide, and it is so desperately needed. And the number one thing I can say about that I found so interesting, two quick stories, and then I want Deborah to have time, because I want to be conscious of all your time. But 2 things is that there are many organizations that give income generating grants to women in Rwanda. Some of our women are part of that, and we've actually been trying to link them to other organizations who do that too, so they can have work and be confident and then eventually pay their own children's school fees. One mother who was in the counseling pilot group reported that when she got the money for the income generating initiative, the post-traumatic stress came back to her from what happened to her with the rape and the genocide, that all of a sudden she thought, oh my God, I've got to spend the money all at once. And the killers are coming for me. I've got to, what am I going to do? And she went out and she spent the entire amount that she had been given. And she came to us and said, I wish that every woman who goes through income generating activities and training would be able to have counseling as well. So that's why that was so important. And then the second short story that I wanted to share is I was recently on a trip in Rwanda 3 weeks ago. We were giving bicycles and school fees to students who walk 4 hours to and from school. So we brought the mothers and the students from very, very rural areas together at a very safe place at a Vega Center, which is one of our partners, and it's a women's center. And they got to stay there for 3 days. They have never been on vacation, and they are always cooking and cleaning and taking care of their homes. So this was such a wonderful moment for them not to have to do all the hard labor getting water 4 times a day. And we also use this as an opportunity to do HIV testing and counseling. And when the mothers, some of the mothers for the very first time found out from their rapes that they had had HIV and did not know, when they came out of counseling, I saw them organically on their own in a group singing, and they were praying and they were singing a cappella Hallelujah. And it was the most beautiful moment that I've witnessed in my life. And so I wanted to share that with you because that is the power of counseling for them, and it is so wonderful that you are helping to support this program. So I really appreciate it.
Jules, do you want to just tell everyone that they can actually see the story on that TED talk that you gave? And also the Alleluia song is also on YouTube.
Yes, both of those stories are on YouTube, and you can watch them on the Foundation Rwanda channel. I'm very happy to share that with everyone. And I will say that when Verena got her smile back and wanted us all to come in the middle of the night so she could show the village, I said, the village is not going to see you at night, but tomorrow they will see you. And when she reported back to tell me that the family of the man who did that to her no longer tease her, and I forgot to tell you the very best part of the story, which is in that dental room I said to her, what are you going to do? I want to know what's the first thing you're going to do with your new smile. And her response is, I'm going to smile at the man who did this to me.
Wow.